you're giving you a dependent care benefit. Which one do you think would be better for you, for the taxpayer? Not the child tax credit, the employer or the child independent care? Well, either. We don't know. That's part of our tax planning. We have to look at that. So I have a client who works for Nike. Nike gives her $5,000 a year to pay for her daycare, right? So we're good, right? Okay, she has a husband. Her husband worked. Last year, her husband decided he wasn't going to work. He wasn't going to look for work, but he wasn't going to take care of their kid either. So that whole $5,000 became taxable income to her. Okay? So we do have to look at what it does. Let's do a check for understanding. So she was a qualified full-time student for 8 months. Still work full-time all year. They have 2 qualified children. How much is Janet's imaginary income? So how much is Janet's imaginary income, you guys? They have 2 kids, 2 qualifying children. Yes, Gwen.
My question is it's not in reference to this slide, it's in reference to the previous slide where you talked about if your employer gave you the money. But what if you have a dependent care flexible spending account where you pay into your own money? Like, how does that work?
It's the same way. It's pre-tax dollars, so it wasn't taxed on. It wasn't taxed, so you better be using that on daycare. Okay?
Okay.
So it's the same thing. Good question. Good question. So the answer to this is, first of all, how much money, imaginary income, do we get if we have 2 or more qualifying people? Put it in chat. How much are we going to get of imaginary income? There you go, Cindy, 500. So if you do 500 times 8, you should come up with 4,000. So it is important that you understand, okay? It's important that you understand it's either $250 worth of imaginary income or $500 worth of imaginary income per month, okay? Give me a green check if you understand that concept. $250 a month, depending on what month we're talking about, for 1, $500 for 2 or more. Thank you. It'll make your life a lot easier. So, quick question. Do you guys have any questions about exercise 9.1? I can look at that really quick, but it seemed like, let's see what it was. Oops, my inkling went away. Where's my inkling? 9.1. Oh, no, we can do this real quick. So I'm gonna put up my chat. What's the difference between the two, Dan? The difference is if you have 1 qualifying person, you only get $250 imaginary income a month. If you have 2 or more, you get 500. That's the difference. Depends on the quantity of qualifying persons you have. So Alice Keller is divorced. Her daughter Janet 5 lived with her all year. Alice would have been able to claim Janet as a dependent, except that she signed a waiver allowing her ex-husband to do so while she was working. Alice sent her daughter to the Kitty Care Center. Is Alice going to be able to claim the child and dependent care credit? Yes or no in chat? Right, because remember, it does not travel. No traveling involved, okay? Christine Williams' husband, Henry, was disabled and unable to care for himself for the entire year. Christine hired a nurse to care for him in their home while she is working. They will file a joint return. Give me an X in chat if she's going to be able to claim the dependent care, child and dependent care credit. An X, please. Yes. I need a way to differentiate between the Y's. Okay, you guys? When I get just a whole bunch of Y's, it's hard to know, okay? Sydney and Stella Anderson have a dependent daughter, Andrea 8. Sydney works full-time, and Stella is extensively involved in charity work. They paid the daily child care center to take care of Andrea, while Stella worked for various charities. Stella did not receive any compensation for her work. Their filing joint return are they going to get the child and dependent care credit? You're right, no, because volunteering doesn't count for anything except for thank you. Jim and Mary McGraw have 2 dependent children, Tom 10 and Dana 4. Jim worked all year. Mary looked for a job in July and worked from August through December. They paid a babysitter to care for the children from July through December. Are they going to get to claim the dependent care credit? Yes. Harold and Betsy Atkinson have a son, Stuart 4. Harold abandoned the family, moving out of the home on April 20th. Betsy began working on May 4th. She paid baby watchers to take care of Stuart while she worked. She is not filing a joint return. She's claiming Stuart and Betsy had 100% of the household. Give me an X in chat if Betsy is going to get to claim the dependent care credit. Yep, and she's going to get to be head of household too because he hadn't lived there the last 6 months of the year. Gloria Richards is divorced. She pays her mother Janet's care for her 8-year-old dependent son after school. Janet provides all her own support, cares for her grandson in her home. Yes or no? Is she going to be able to claim the dependent care credit? She pays her mother. Yes, we don't care. She pays her mother. If her mother's willing to claim the income, because so that's going to be the caveat, is the mom is going to custody. Gloria pays. Her mother, Janet, takes care of the 8-year-old grant dependent after school while Gloria's at work. Janet provides her own support and cares for her grandson at her own home. So we're caring about Gloria paying her mom. That's fine. It's okay. Her mom's well over the age of 19 and not a dependent, okay? Mr. and Mrs. Takashumi, or whatever, however you shimmy, both work. They pay their 18-year-old son, Mike, to care for his little brother. Oh, you guys are so good. Sam is a dependent, but Mike did not live with them, and they're not claiming him as a dependent. No, because he's under 19. Good job. Good job, you guys. So when we are looking at the 2441, because that is the form that we have to file complete in order to figure the child independent care credit, when we are looking at box 10 W2 and or box 12, when we're paying those cares, okay, actually box 10, that's going to be taken into account on page 2, which we're going to look at in a minute. So now we're going to start looking at the form 2441. So we're going to look at parts 1 and part 2. So what is reported in part 1 of the form 2441? What are we going to put in part 1? Provider's name, yeah. What else are we going to put there? I'm going to put the provider's information. What is included in that information? We're going to put their address and their EIN or social security number. And the amount we paid, okay? So what if the care provider is an individual? What do we use for their identification number? So you're just going to a little mom paw. What are we going to put? Their social security number. That's right. Okay, so we're going to talk about this. Let's say I have a client who provides daycare out of her home. And she has to give a statement to the parent of how much they paid. And she has to provide her address, her name, her address, her phone number, and her social security number, okay? If that is my client, I am going to recommend that my client apply for an EIN number from IRS, which is free of charge, and use an EIN number. And the reason why is if I have 15 children in my home and I'm giving 15 statements out with my social security number, who knows how many people have access to my social security number, right? So we need to help our clients protect their social security number. But let's say they don't have an EIN, we have to put a social security number. So if I am a provider and I've given them my social security number and they put it on their return, what do you think IRS is going to be doing? So what do you think IRS is going to be looking for? Looking for that income. Their computer is going to run over and say, this social security number provided daycare to the tune of $10,000. They're going to run over, the system's going to run over and check and make sure that that's there, right? That they're claiming it. That's why I said on our last check for understanding, or in the example, excuse me, it talked about that you paid your mother. So in order for you to be able, now remember, we're supposed to claim all our worldwide income. So technically, mom should be claiming that income. But that's the reason why IRS is going to check to make sure. So what do we put in part 2? What goes in part 2? Yes, the qualifying child or qualifying person, okay? Because remember, if we have a disabled spouse, they're going to be a qualifying person. And what are we going to put there about them? We're going to have their name, social, and how much we spent. Good job. So you have a handle on the first part, right? So we've got Form 2441. Before we move on, an example. We paid 2 providers $1,500 using your text tool. Actually, do I have someone that will volunteer to be a scribe that will write on my screen? Raise your hand if you're willing to stick your neck out there. Do I have someone that has annotations? There we go, Laura. So Laura, if I have 2 providers, can you show me how I'm going to enter this on using your text tool on my form? I like how you put here. You put, now I asked for Laura to use her text tool, so I'm going to ask that she volunteered to be the scribe. But I need you to put Okay, so the point here is, how are you going to enter this on the return? How are you going to enter this information on this form? There you go. That's perfect. Okay. So we're going to, because I have two separate providers, I'm going to need to put each of their information separately. Okay. Because it would be unfair to add the amount together and charge it to one person. Thank you, Laura. I appreciate you being my scribe. Thank you. So in the second portion, we're going to enter, you paid provider, so we're still in the first section. If you paid provider A $4,000, anybody go ahead and text on my screen, how are we going to enter that information on the part one? The provider, we paid them $4,000. There you go. Yeah, so we're just going to put the provider's information and we're going to put $4,000. In part two, what do you think we're going to do? How do you think we're going to list it in part two? Someone want to go out there on a limb and put it on my screen? Or even put it in chat? Yes, Robin, thank you. Well, yes, Laura, we need to know. But based on this, let's just assign half of it to one kid and half of it to another. How's that going to look on my form? So 2,000 to one and 2,000 to the other. Right. We're going to separate it out per child. Okay. Right. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So we're good there. We got that concept. So I got it. I've got a. I'm going to throw a little wrench in there for you. Okay. So I have two kids, and I only pay daycare, and they're both qualifying. They're both under age 13. My houses are principal abode. Everything works. Okay. They both would qualify. What if one has 4,000 and the other has this? None. What am I going to put there? How am I going to, I'm going to erase this real quick. How am I going to enter if I had 4,000 for one and none for the other? Okay, so Valerie says 3,000. Okay. So what I'm going to tell you is we've got kid one, right? And we got kid two. And we got $4,000 and we've got zero. Okay. So what is the rule for the child independent care credit is a certain amount if you have one or a certain amount if you have two or more. What is it? So if you have one, you only get the maximum amount of qualified expenses you can use is 3,000. But if you have two, it's 6,000, whether or not you paid it. Okay, so here we've got your kid one, they're in daycare, they're a baby, and you're spending $6,000 a year. That's cheap for the baby. Let's say you're spending $10,000 a year for the baby, okay? but yet you've got a child that qualified if they had expenses and they're in school. So because you have two, even though the second child has no expenses, you can use up to $6,000 if that's what you pay. Now let me show you how that works out here. Notice line 3 says add the amounts in column C, line 2. Okay, that's back here. So we want to list on this form our qualified people. Okay? So if I had a disabled spouse that was at home and he had expenses, and then I had a school-age child who had no expenses, I'm going to list both of them because you don't enter more than, on line 3, you don't enter more than $3,000 for one or $6,000 for two or more. So let's go back to my $4,000 example, okay? One had $4,000, one had none. But because we have two is more than one, we get to put 4,000 there instead of 3,000. Give me a green check if you understand that, okay? So, because this is important when you're doing this with your client, that you are paying attention, okay? So just don't think, oh, one kid, I only need to know about one kid. We need to know about all. So we talked about a qualifying person earlier. One of the requirements is there must be a qualifying child who can be claimed as a dependent who lives with the taxpayer when the care was provided, and they must be under what age? What age must they be under in chat? There you go. There you go, Hector. Good job, Cindy, Robin, and Robin, my Robins. You have to be under the age of 13, or you haven't reached the age of 13. And we talked about if we have two eligible children and only one child has expenses, we're going to be able to look at the total of $6,000 if that's what we paid. So let's look at this form here. We're going to talk about, remember I asked you what was the maximum and the minimum? So first of all, we have no phase outs because it says 43,000, no limit. They're going to get 20%. And if your income falls between, is over 0 but under, but not over 15,000, again, it's very important that you read the form. The percentage they're going to get is 35%. So if all things being good, and I had $4,000 worth of expenses, and that's how much I got to claim, and I was going to get a 20%, so in here was going to be 20%. Well, that's not going to work. I can't draw, I can't write. How much is my credit going to be? If I have $4,000 worth of expenses, how much is my credit going to be? And 20%. I'm going to get 20% of what I paid. There you go, Robin. I'm looking at $800 credit. Is it refundable or non-refundable? Right. So it can only take my tax liability. So that 800 is going to be down here, and 20%, if someone would like to put that 20% there, would be appreciated. So now what we're going to look at is we're going to look at 4, we talked about, we're going to look at 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's the lines we're going to look at right now. So we're going to go back to, I'm going to put my $4,000 here because that was our expenses, okay, we had from an example. And then what are we going to enter on line 5? What is going to be entered on line 5?
Hello.
Remember, you can make it bigger by using your little magnifying glass down at the bottom.
Son así, son
Excuse me, what are we entering on line 4? I don't want to go to line 5 yet. We've got on line 4, we are putting the earned income, right? Okay. So if you're married, filing joint, whatever, your earned income. So if you're both working, we're going to put the earned income. If only one spouse is working, we're going to put their earned income. If you are single, we're going to put your earned income. Then on line 5, you notice this only applies to married filing joint, okay? This is where we're going to put that imaginary income. So someone using their text tool, put on my screen on line 4, put $21,000. Does someone want to put that on there for me? On line 4, just can you slap in 21,000? I need it right there, but not a check. I need it. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. Nope, we're not on line 5. So we're not to line 5. Okay? So right now we're doing progressive here. We've got our expenses. We've got one spouse made $21,000. And then we had one child and the other spouse went to school for 5, do I want to do that? 5 months. That's our imaginary income. How much is our imaginary income going to be? And we are going to put it on line 5.
Oh, Dios, mi corazón.
What's our imaginary income? So the spouse, my husband worked, made $2,100, and I went to school for 5 months. Ellie? I think how much, I have my little cheat sheet, and I don't think I have. Elia? However you say your name, sorry, my dear. If we had 5 times 2, how much? What if we have 1 kid? How much is our imaginary income going to be a month? There you go. You're right. So there you go. You guys are ahead of me. Thank you so much. So right now, we don't want this 2,100 up here, okay? That's not there, okay? So line 3 is our expenses. We spent $4,000, okay? Okay. We spent $4,000. My husband made $2,100. I went to school for 5 months. I had 1 kid. 250 times 5 months is $1,250. And then look what it says here. Enter the smallest of 3, 4, or 5. So what am I going to put on line 6? Someone just put it on line 6 for me. Yep, I'm going to move it down. I'll move the other $1,250 down because I got a hold of it. Okay, and so if my income is $21,000, okay, because we're not going to add the imaginary income, we're just doing the from your 1040. What is my percentage going to be, first of all? What am I going to put on line 8? Okay, so this is where it's important to read what it says. What am I putting on line 8? It says over but not over. Over but not over. It would be 32%. Okay? This would be over 21,000. So that's why it's important, okay? So so once I have a thing up there, okay. So now we're going to do 32% times 1250, and who wants to put that on line 11? Yeah, so actually, that is going to go down here, okay? So it says multiply, line 6 by the decimal on line 8, so one of them is going to go there. And then tax liability limit, we don't have one of those, so we are going to get $400. So the reason for this example is, it is not necessarily are you going to get 32% of the 4,000. If you have imaginary income and it is smaller than the amount, so you're looking at the smaller of these three. Give me a green check if you are good with that. So just one really quick note about the credit limit worksheet. That worksheet is used when you have foreign tax credit, okay? That don't happen very often. Okay, we're going to take a break. I'm going to go find my break slide. We're going a little slower than I did. It's 12:38, 12:40, 40, 10 plus 15. How about if I see you back at 5 till, okay? So if you're, wait a minute, don't put your coffee cup up yet. Hold on. Now put your coffee cup up. I needed to clear that. So put a coffee cup next to your name. I'll see you back. That's like, is that too long? No, that's like 16 minutes. Okay, sounds good. And then we will finish our 2441. Thank you, guys. Okay, you guys, we're going to get started here in a couple of minutes. If you're back, take down your coffee cup, please. Hello, Mr. Dan. How are you?
Voy, Diana.
Where were we? Okay, let's get started. Hopefully you're all back in your places. Vanjie, hold on a second. Give me a second, you guys. Just hold on a second here. I need to find Vanjie. Okay. Hope you had a good break. So we only use page 2 when you have an amount in box 10 on the W-2, or as I believe Gwen mentioned earlier, if you have a box 12 like a health FSA, which is a flex savings account, okay? Because basically what that does is that second page subtracts off what you receive tax-free from your total amount you paid. So if you had a child, a baby that you were caring for and having care done, and it could easily cost you $10,000 a year, and your employer gave you $5,000, you're still going to have $5,000 worth of expenses to look at. If we only had one kid, there you go, Vanjie, thanks. If you only had one child, you'd only get to use 3,000 of that, but still. So that's what we do on the second page, and I know you guys had some exercises that you did. 9.2 and 9.3. Did you have any questions about those exercises? Give me a green check if you're pretty good on the 2441, a red X if you have a question about this form, because we're going to be moving on to some other subjects. So basically, you're only going to complete page 2 if you have on your W-2, you have amount in box 10, or you've got in box 12 a flex savings account. Now, I can trust you. You can trust that your client is going to let you know if they've got a flex savings account they've been using. So I only have, I don't have enough green checks. So are you good with exercise 9.3 and 9.2? Okay. So if you don't have annotation tools, just write green or whatever, an X mark in the chat. Thank you, guys. So now we're going to check for understanding here. Read the question and put a check mark next to what you think is the correct answer.
Dime, Yana.
Okay, let's take a look at these. The credit is not refundable. It's non-refundable. The custodial parent cannot claim this. It's not a traveling P. And qualified child credit must be under the age, haven't reached their 13th birthday. So that only leaves employer provided for dependent care. Reported in box 10 of a taxpayer's form W-2 must always be entered on form 2441. Basically, when we're doing page 2, we are reconciling the 2441. I mean, we're reconciling the box 10 of the W-2. Okay, thank you, guys. So now we're going to look at the credit for elderly or disabled. So this is a seldom used non-refundable credit. So can someone put in chat or raise their hand and tell me why this is a seldom used credit? Does anybody know why this is a seldom used credit? There's a particular reason in your book that it said why it is a seldom used credit. There you go, Cindy. It has not, they're almost dead. It has not been adjusted for inflation since 1985. That means it has very low limits on it. They haven't bothered to change it. So there is, in Oregon there is, but I don't know about the federals, there's a way to look at credits. When they decide about credits, they usually see how often they're used. And I'm serious, this one is so seldom used that it should have gone to the wayside. So the taxpayers have to be over what age to qualify? You're funny, Dan. Dan says the longest choice of answer for multiple choice answer is the best option. Well, if you're guessing, it's the best option. Yes, Valerie and Megan, you have to be 65 years old. We've got some other requirements, excuse me. And if you're 65 or older, you have to be retired on permanent or total disability. Receive taxable disability benefits. Wait a minute, excuse me. They do not have to be over 65, if all of the following are true. Retired on permanent and total disability, receive taxable disability benefits, have not reached mandatory retirement age, the age when the employer retirement program would require them to retire. So if you're under 65, let's say that you're working at a job and you become disabled, and when you're 55 and your employer has disability insurance on you. So you're going to, why you collect that at age 55, and then we have to find out when does the employer consider full retirement age for that retirement plan. So let's say the employer says that it's age 59. So when you are on this disability from age 55 until you turn 59, it is taxable income to you. It's a taxable benefit. And then once you hit the age 59, because that was the mandatory age for retirement for your employer's plan, then it just becomes non-taxable, or just it becomes retirement benefits, not disability benefits. So there's very, very low phase out. So remember, all good things must come to an end. So basically, if you're in this filing status, what is the retirement age for H&R Block? I have no idea, sir. They don't have a retirement plan. We contribute to 401ks. So I don't believe 401ks, I believe they follow the same pattern. But let's say my husband has a pension from his old employer, and retirement age for that pension is 59 and a half for that pension, okay? So if I'm single, head of household, qualifying widower, I can have only earned income up to $1,750 and non-taxable retirement income of $5,000. Okay, so it doesn't take much to phase out of this. If we had to figure this elderly, credit for elderly or disabled, we're going to use Schedule R. I can honestly tell you, in 11 years, I've never done a single one of these, okay? Let's check for understanding. That's about all we're going to say. The credit for the elderly and disabled credit is used quite often. True or false? Correct. Correct answer is false, for sure. So now we're going to take the opportunity to look at the ACA, which is the Affordable Care Act, and that burning question from earlier. So, is there still a shared responsibility payment or penalty for not being covered by medical insurance? Yes or no? Is there still a penalty in place for 2019? Marat says no. What do the rest of you think? If you said no, you are correct. That's a part of the Affordable Care Act, okay? So that's what the ACA stands for the Affordable Care Act. That part was, well, Dan, there's mixed reasonings about that. So what you got to understand is the original theory behind that was, if we charge you a penalty, you'll go out and get medical, and then the more people that are buying medical, it'll make medical cost less. But what happened was, it didn't take the young people very long to take out their calculator and go, oh, my penalty is $695 if I don't have medical insurance. But if I buy medical insurance, it's going to cost me $5,000 a year, right? That's what it's going to cost me. So it didn't take the young ones long, the healthy ones, to figure out that they were better off paying the penalty. Now, I agree, Dan, we can't talk politics. So when you are a tax preparer, you don't talk about God, politics, and how much money people have. You only talk about what people have, okay? You never get in a pissing contest with your client. So when this came into effect, it was commonly known as Obamacare. And we are not allowed to call anything that we discuss about taxes anything other than what the legal term was. So you could actually have gotten in trouble from Block. So it's the Affordable Care Act. What about due diligence? Well, the due diligence for this credit isn't the 8867, but we need to always be practicing due diligence. So when the Affordable Care Act was in, there was actually the shared responsibility penalty was in place from tax years 2014 to 2018. And we had to figure out a penalty if you didn't have an exemption available. So what we're going to be talk about that's still in play from the Affordable Care Act is the premium tax credit. But when we are looking at the Affordable Care Act, we had to figure out what is the tax household. So we had to figure out everyone that was in your tax household that was claimed or claimable. So let's see, there was an exercise here that I think we can cover. Exercise 9.4. So this one gets a little wordy. So let me bring down my chat box. So if you guys fall asleep and you start snoozing and you put Z, then I'll know. So Richard and Emily are newly married and filed joint. This is their second marriage. They each have 2 children from previous marriage, and Emily's mother lives with them and helps out for daycare. Okay. So Richard's children, Rachel 24 and Paul 20, they both live with their mother. They often visit Richard and Emily on the weekends. Rachel is a college graduate and works as a preschool teacher. She's saving her money for graduate school. Richard spends all his money, and their mother provides she provides their daily support. Rachel and Paul do not provide over half of their own support. Paul is working, he's trying to get a direction on what he's doing. So he earns $7,100, but he's paying his mom $100 of rent. But she's still providing the rest of his support, and he's not providing over half his own support. So that covers Rachel and Paul. Then we have Jennifer and Jeremy, and they are Emily's children. They both lived with Richard and Emily until May, when Jennifer moved out to live with her father. Jeremy continued to live with Richard and Emily for the entire year. Louisa is Emily's mother, and she's retired, and her income from Social Security is not enough for her to live on her own. In exchange for room and board, she picks up Jeremy from school and takes him to activities. She also helps with housekeeping, cooks dinner, sign me up most nights. Richard and Emily provide more than half of her support. So what we're needing to know is, are they part of Richard and Emily's tax household? So is Richard and Emily part of the tax household? Yes or no in chat? Yes, they are the tax household, okay? So now we're going to look at Rachel. Is Rachel part of Richard and Emily's tax household? Valerie says no. There you go. No, because they live with their mother. Okay, she's not part of Rachel and Emily's. Is Paul part of Rachel and Emily's tax household? Give me an X or N. That's fine. I'm watching chat. So I have one yes. So let's go back and look at Paul. Paul is unsure of his direction in college. So he has decided to take a year off to think about his future. He is a drummer in a local band and earns $7,100. He pays his mother $100 a month rent. Richard also gives his son weekly spending money, and his mother provides for the rest of his needs. Paul does not provide over half his own support. So all I see is a green background. Can the rest of you guys see the exercise 9.4? Okay, so Vanjie, I'm not sure. Just hang in there with me. I'm not sure, okay, why you're seeing a green background. So Paul is not part of Richard and Emily's tax household. He is part of his mother's tax household, okay? Now we're going to look at Jennifer. Is Jennifer part of Richard and Emily's tax household? No. And why is the answer no about Jennifer? Right. She didn't live there over half the year. There you go. Good job. That's called critical thinking. You're remembering what you've applied prior knowledge to currently. And so then what about Jeremy? Is Jeremy part of the tax household? Yes, because he lived there all year. And that is just going to leave lovely little Louise. Is she part of this tax household? Yes, she is. And the reason why is she says here Social Security is enough to live on her own, and they're providing over half her support. Good job. So give me a green check if you understand that who was part of that tax household. And here's how it was. Good job. Good job. So let's say that Paul and Emily, so let's say that Emily released, Jennifer had lived there all year, but released the exemption to her ex-spouse. Would she be part of Emily's tax household or the father's tax household? What do you think? So Jennifer lived there all year. After all, then she released the exemption to the father. Would she be part of Emily's tax household for this or the father? Robin says father. So I have a split. So when you release the exemption for the ACA, she is still part of your tax household. That's where it comes into claimed or claimable. Emily is just choosing not to claim Jennifer. She's releasing it, but she would still be part of the tax household. Okay? Now that the penalty has gone away with, we have to worry. There's a lot less instruction on this. Okay, check for understanding. Good job. So which statement about the Affordable Care Act individual shared responsibility provision is not true? U.S. citizens are required to have qualified health insurance for a tax year, there it is, 2019. So what is the marketplace? When we're talking about the Affordable Care Act, it's not like your local market. What is the marketplace? Does someone want to unmute and tell me what the marketplace is? Yes, Cindy, it's a place you can go purchase medical insurance, okay? So it's a place where people without health insurance can find information about health insurance options and can purchase health insurance. The premium tax credit is a credit that helps pay the cost of health care coverage through the marketplace. Okay? So if we're going to talk about PTC, which is the premium tax credit versus the advanced premium tax credit. So when you go out to the marketplace and you've met some criteria, you can purchase medical insurance and you could receive some money from the federal government to help pay for your medical insurance, okay? They don't send it to you, they send it to your insurance company. So if I qualify for that, that's called the premium tax credit, okay? That's the portion the federal government's going to pay. I can either claim that, not ask for it. The other is the A. The APTC is the advance. So the government says your insurance is going to cost you $500 a month, and we're going to kick in $400. And so you've gone to the marketplace, you filled out all your paperwork, and they're going to send it in advance to your insurance company, and you're only going to have to write a check for $100, okay? The other option you have is to go to the marketplace and pay for your own medical insurance, and then on your tax return, we will figure your premium tax credit, and you will get the credit, and it is refundable. So if I have gone to the marketplace and purchased my insurance, what tax document are they going to send me? Someone can text it on my screen if you'd like, or you can all text it on my screen. What tax document is the marketplace going to issue? Okay. No one's going to text it on my screen? You're right. It's the 1095A. So hopefully I have my text tool out. Do I have my text tool out? Can I put my text tool up there? There you go. Thank you for putting that there, and I can move that then. Thank you. It's the 1095A. So you know how IRS loves their requirements. In order to qualify for the premium tax credit, either in advance or on your tax return, we have some rules here. So first off, you have to be a U.S. citizen or lawfully present, okay? You have to go to the marketplace to get your coverage. You have to meet some household income requirements. No employer sponsor plan. So if your employer provides medical and you can't pay the premiums, you're not going to get any help, okay? So if there's an employer plan, you do not qualify for the premium tax credit or advanced premium tax credit. No government program. That means you can't be on Medicaid. You can't be on, in Oregon, we have what's called the Oregon Health Plan, okay? So the interesting thing about the Affordable Care Act was the federal government went to every state and said, would you like to expand your Medicaid program, okay? So by expanding your Medicaid program, you're going to be able to safety net more people, okay? You're going to be able to get more people that you give care for without charging. So each state had that option. So if your state refused to do that, then what happened was, and I'm going to use Texas because I know Texas is one that refused the expanded. That meant that so now they have a limited amount. That meant that a majority of their taxpayers who did not have medical insurance got a shared responsibility penalty because they refused to be able to cover more people because they didn't want that headache or whatever that problem was. There's no married filing separate, and you cannot be a dependent. So if you receive the premium tax credit or the advanced premium tax credit, we have to reconcile it every year on the what if the employer offers very bad, it is still required to have. I know, Murat, it's terrible, but they were required to give minimum coverage. It was not minimum coverage at affordable rates, but yeah, that's why when the new administration came in, that they wanted to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, but you got to understand that we changed our Constitution, and a president can't wipe that out, okay? What he could do is he did the only part he could get rid of was the shared responsibility penalty. And he made that decision in 2018, but it wasn't effective in 2019. So guess how many of our clients dropped their medical insurance in 2018 because they didn't think they were going to get a penalty. And then when they came to my tax desk, I said, did you have a medical all year? And they said, no, I didn't need it because there's no longer a penalty. And I said, yeah, that's right, starting in 2019. So here's your penalty. Here you go. An employer they're supposed to have a minimum required plan, but they have criteria too, Murat. So if they're small, they don't. So there are people, I believe that most employers are supposed to, but that could go by a state. There could be states there too, okay? So if I got premium tax credit in advance or am going, and I got it in advance, remember I have to have this form 1095A. The marketplace is going to give me that, and I'm going to bring that to my tax preparer, and she's going to work, or he's going to fill out an 8962 to reconcile it, to make sure that you didn't get too much, or maybe you didn't get enough, okay? So now it is hit or miss. Our clients bring us insurance forms, they don't. So when you're asking about insurance, you need to make sure that they didn't have a 1095A. Because if you file a tax return and they bought their insurance from the marketplace, it will e-file. There'll be no problem. The problem will be when they go to get their refund. IRS holds it up and says, wait a minute here, you got money from the marketplace. Premium tax credit, we have to reconcile it. They send them a letter that says, please fax us a copy of your 1095A and Form 8962. So then they call me up on the phone and say, I read it from the IRS, it's your fault. And I'm like, no, it's not my fault. You didn't bring me the form. So then I said, bring it in to me. I go into Blockworks, I create the form, and I happily charge them $25 because they would have paid for that form, or $30. They would have paid for that form anyway, okay? And then I kindly take it to my fax machine and fax it to the government. So what this reconciliation does is it says, did you get too much, or does the government owe you money? So if you have a client that has a 1095A, you know, part of your job is tax planning. You always tell your client, if you change a job, if you lose a job, if you get a raise, you need to call the marketplace and let them know, okay? If you lost your job, maybe they're going to pay more of your medical. If you got a raise, they're going to pay less. So I'm going to give you an example. I had a client who gets this. He gets the advanced premium tax credit. And because his employer doesn't offer medical, and neither does hers. So it must be a size, Murat. It must be due to size. They've got like 3 employees, okay? And they gave him a bonus in December. He had no idea that this bonus was coming. So he couldn't call the marketplace and say, hey, I'm getting a bonus. This bonus was $10,000. And guess what? He had to pay back all of his advanced premium tax credit to the tune of about $11,000 that he'd gotten in advance. So we need to make sure that our clients know that they've got responsibilities with the 1095A. And the other thing is if they don't have, if they receive the 1095A and they get a letter from IRS because they didn't submit it, until they find that 1095A and have someone fix it, they're not getting their refund. End of story. You do have to have, there are qualified health care coverage. So they're either employer-sponsored, government program, marketplace, or individual. So you can go to the marketplace and buy individual. So let's say I need insurance. So I go to the marketplace, I don't qualify for the premium tax credit or advanced premium tax credit. I can still purchase medical out there, okay? So in chat or on the screen, name the 3 tax forms notifying taxpayers of their medical insurance. So there are 3 forms. They're going to receive 1, but sometimes they receive 2 of them. So what are they? We know one of them is a 1095A. What is the other 2? Brad, I told you that one. There's 2 others. You can text it on my screen. Yep, 1095C, and there's one more, and a 1095B. So we're going to talk about those in just a second. Let's check for understanding. Individuals may purchase marketplace coverage generally within 60 days following the event, except which event? Okay, so these are called events. We change in our citizenship residency status. That's a life-changing event. So when that event happens, you have 60 days to go to the marketplace and enroll in medical insurance. You lost your qualifying coverage at your employer. Maybe you got fired. Maybe you quit. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe the pandemic hit. Maybe your employer went out of business and you don't have qualifying medical coverage anymore. You don't have to pick up COBRA, okay? You have 60 days to go to the marketplace. Let's say your family status changed. You got married, you got divorced, you had a baby. Something like that happens. Those are life-changing events, which gives you a 60-day window outside of open enrollment. But if you just flat out miss open enrollment, it's no different than at your employer. If you got a new job and they have an open enrollment and you don't do what you need to do, you miss out. So if you answered C, that's correct. The forms you would receive are 1095A if you got your medical through the marketplace. If it is employer-sponsored, it could be a 1095B and a 1095C. These are based on employer size, and we used to never for years we couldn't get medical. We couldn't get these documents out of employers, and now lots of employers are sending you a 1095B
Oye, ¿y el
and
plástico?
C both, okay?
¿Por qué lo sacaste?
Where is one other place that would give you a clue? We talked about it in chapter 1, that your client had medical insurance. Outside of these 3 forms, there you go, Robin. W-2 has a code DD in box 12. That's how we know that they had medical insurance. Doesn't necessarily mean all year, but we don't have to ask them that anymore. So let's check for understanding which of the following form is sent to an individual who purchased marketplace insurance. Yes, and that is again a mandatory form that we have to see as tax preparers. So give me a green check if you're good with the premium tax credit or the advanced premium tax credit, if you understand kind of what's going on. Okay, good job. So I told you this chapter was a potpourri of credits. So now we're going to look at about 3 more credits. And the first one we are going to look at is the adoption credit. It was in your participants guide, and we're just going to discuss it a little bit. Is this a refundable or non-refundable credit, the adoption credit? Is the adoption credit refundable or non-refundable? So Claude says it's refundable. Robin says it's refundable. Valerie says non-refundable. Brad says probably not, but I would guess. So it is a non-refundable credit. So it can only make your tax liability 0. So here's extra credit. What is the maximum adoption credit for 2019? You can text it on my screen or put it in chat. What is the maximum? There you go, Kathleen. It is up to $14,080. Okay? So I want you to listen to me carefully. I have a question for you. Does it matter if the adoption is of a U.S. citizen or resident? Or in other words, does it make a difference if the adoption was not for a U.S. citizen or resident? Do we distinguish rules between U.S. citizen residents and non-U.S. citizens? It does. Yes, Murat, it does. You're right. So if you are a U.S. citizen, when do you deduct the adoption expenses? So if you are a U.S. citizen, if you're adopting a U.S. citizen or resident, when are the expenses deducted? It's not the years the fees were paid. When are they? When is that? When? That's not the right answer. The following year, right? So when considering the adoption credit, we must take into account whether or not they are a U.S. citizen or resident, and in what year expenses are incurred and deducted, and when was the adoption finalized, if at all. So that's what we've got to take into account. So let's look at this one. And this is what we're going to look at. This is a U.S. You're adopting a U.S. citizen or resident. So Melinda and Ted paid $1,000 of qualified adoption expenses in 2018 and $6,000 in 2019. If the adoption does not become finalized in 2019, how much of their expenses will they be able to claim on their 2019 return? So it's not finalized. How much are they going to claim on their 2019 return? So just remember, I told you, or you should know, that the expenses are taken the year after or total when finalized. So if it's not finalized, we can only take the expenses from 2018. So if you answered 1,000, you are correct. So if the adoption does not finalize in 2019, what are we going to do with the $6,000? When can we claim that $6,000 worth of expenses? What year? There you go, 2020. So it's the year after, okay? So now we've got, remember we've got our 1,000 and our 6,000, and the adoption becomes finalized in 2019. What are we going to do? How much expense are we going to take on our 2019 return? It becomes finalized, so what are we going to get to take? There you go, Marat, you're right. Your $7,000 is right. There you go. So now that we have this $7,000 total, what happens if, this is a U.S. citizen, what happens if it was never finalized? How would we deduct these expenses, or can we deduct these expenses? It's a U.S. citizen. So I'm going to tell you, first of all, it's U.S. citizen, so we can, but how are we going to deduct them? When are we going to take the 1,000 and when are we going to take the 6,000? Yes, Megan, the year after they're paid. So if it was never finalized, we would have taken the expenses in 2018 and 2019 and the expenses in 2019 and 2020. Give me a green check next to your name if you understand that. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So that's U.S. This is a U.S. citizen. This is their rule. So now we're going to look at a foreign adoption, and we still have Ted with 1,000 and Melinda with 1,018 and 6,019. So now let's change everything and say the child they are adopting is not a U.S. citizen or resident, and the adoption is not finalized in 2019. How much of their expenses will they be able to claim in 2019? It hasn't finalized, so how much can they claim? That's right. That's right, Valerie and Kathleen. Because it's a foreign adoption, they can claim none of them. Yeah. So if our return, if our adoption was finalized in 2019, so they finalized it in 2019, how much can they deduct? How much is their expenses? What can they put on their 2019 return? Yeah, the whole 7,000. Right. Okay. So you're seeing the differences? If it's a U.S. citizen, you take the expenses the year after they incurred or the year they become finalized. If it's foreign, you can't take any expenses till it's finalized, okay? What happens for a foreign adoption if we never finalize it? What happens to these expenses? Can we deduct them? Zero, you're right, okay? You can't. So that's different. A U.S. citizen, we're going to take them in the year after, but if it's and it was never finalized, foreign, we're never going to be able to claim them. So I want to go really quick because I know we're getting low on time, but I like to bring this up because it's near and dear to my heart is the reason, and I had it right. Let me see. It was adoption of special needs. This is important, okay, in my opinion. So an eligible child for purposes of adoption credit or exclusion must be under 18 or physically or mentally incapable of self-care. A special needs child is a child who the state has determined should not be returned to the parent's home. So in other words, the state terminates the parent's right. And will probably not be adopted unless special assistance is provided to the adopted family. No child adopted internationally is considered special needs, okay? A credit equal to the maximum amount of creditable expense is allowed for the adoption of each special need, regardless of the amount of qualified expenses. So basically what that's saying is if you adopt a special needs child, even if your expenses are not $14,080, you can claim the entire credit, okay? So I have a brother-in-law and a sister-in-law who adopted drug-affected kids when they were 5 and 6, and they were labeled special needs. So not only did they get to use the adoption credit, at that time it was a carry forward, because remember it's non-refundable, can only offset your tax liability to zero. It's not carry forward anymore. They also received, until they became 18, they received medical for them and additional funds to help with therapy and stuff. So let's check your understanding, and then we'll cover the last two little credits. In reference to the adoption credit, a special needs child is,
Sí, tienes que echarle agua. Pero es poca. ¿Qué pasa? ¿Qué pasa,
So what I
nene?
want
No
to
se
tell
va a
you guys
jugar.
is it's almost impossible to get the state
Nene,
to
cógelo
terminate
bien, no seas
parental rights,
tramposo,
okay?
mano.
So you know
No
that
sabe
it's got
jugar,
to be
no
super
sabe
severe
jugar.
for them, because for some
sabe
odd
jugar.
reason they think, well, no matter what the parents are, the parents are still the parents. So if you check B, you are correct. So the state has determined should not be returned to the parent's home and will probably not be adopted unless special assistance is provided to the adopting family. We're going to look at our last two little credits in your participant guide. The mortgage interest credit. That is, someone has gone to, in Portland, we have the Housing Authority, and the Housing Authority says if you purchase a home in this area, we will give you a credit. It's usually 20%. We'll give you a credit on your tax return of 20% of the interest you paid on your mortgage all year, okay? I have one client and only one client, not very common. The thing that you have to be careful about when you're doing this is that if, let's say they paid $10,000 in interest and they got a 20% credit, so that means back in the non-refundable on the second page, there'll be $2,000, right? That's 20%. When you're going to put their mortgage interest on the Schedule A, make sure you only put $8,000, the difference. Don't put the whole $10,000, otherwise they're double dipping. They're getting an adjustment on their Schedule A, plus they're getting a credit. So pay attention to that. And then the other one is the foreign tax credit. Where you're going to see the foreign tax credit is you have a client that has brought in a mortgage, a brokerage statement. They have stocks and bonds. And so Charles Schwab sends them a mortgage statement, brokerage statement. And lots of times their portfolios will include foreign income. Okay? So you'll have little bits of credit.
Oh.
And that's where the most common time you're going to see the foreign tax credit. So if you get a brokerage statement and it has a foreign tax credit on it, it has foreign tax, I might be over N. What does that mean? N? It's, oh, ignore. I might, if you need help, get a senior tax pro to help you with that. Okay, let's check their understanding. Was there an understanding? No, there wasn't an understanding. I don't know why I have that written down at the bottom there. Okay, so give me a green check if you're okay with adoption credit, mortgage interest credit, foreign tax credit, or if you have any questions, let me know. I think what they do is they need to cover some of these credits and they don't have a lot of content, so they just dig up a few others. So now you need your pen and paper, okay? And I'm going to help you out here. Oh, Kat was walking on the computer. Awesome. So we got Buchanan. The total tax is $1,800, and the refund is $23.88. Now, you have to fill out an 8962. This is unfair to you because this is a very complicated form. And if I input the information in my operating system, it will do it for it. I've only had to pen and paper the 8962 a handful of times. So for that reason, because my Oregon class, so here you are reaping from me already teaching this, they struggled with this. Make sure that you are writing down all this information because I would like you to go ahead and do the form. I just want you to have the information without having to go on a wild goose chase, which would include getting the instructions for the Form 8962, which you could do at IRS, but this way it will save you some time and just trust that you're never really asked to prepare these by hand. So once you have all this information written down, please give me a green check next to your name. So I kind of need checks next to every name or in chat so that I know, okay, Z, I see you. Valerie, I see you. Okay, I don't want to rush. Okay, Dan's okay. Kathleen, I think I saw yes. Okay, Marat, do you have this all written down? I want to make sure that you have it. Okay, if you need it, you can stay after class then. So now we're going to look at our second case study, the Masterson, and I'm going to get rid of the green marks. And once you have that done, please give me a green check next to your name. Would you be required to do the 8962 for a test? Is that what you're asking, Murad? I'm sorry. Let me put it this way. You better not be. Okay? No, so what you're going to do, Murad, on our final exam, you have a case study you have to do. But here's how we handle that case study. I'm going to give you about 2 weeks before your final exam, I'm going to tell you you need to go get that case study done. I don't want you to do it right now because you haven't learned everything you need to learn to do it. I haven't actually looked at it. So when you come in to take your final exam, that case study's done, okay? So what I usually do is I let my students that are, if you're showing the initiative, so let's say the final exam is on December 15th, I think, for you guys. Hold on a second. No, it's December 12th. It's Saturday the 12th. So let's say you just started, you heeded my advice, and you started to work on this case study 2 or 3 weeks before the final exam. I allow you to give me lines. So I'll say, you say, okay, I think I've got it. And then I say, I make you give me numbers on certain lines. And then I'll say, I won't tell you whether it's right or wrong, but you'll kind of get a clue if I say, you maybe need to go look at that a little closer. That's if you take the initiative. Let me explain to you, there will be absolutely no way that you can take the final exam, come in on Saturday, because remember, we have a double class that day. The morning is going to be review. The afternoon is going to be the final. There's no way that you'll be able to complete that case study and take your final, do the scenarios and your final exam in 3 hours. Now, I can stay later, but you're just going to make yourself real stressed out. But I'll help you with that. It's too soon to be really talking about that, but I'll give you a plan of action. And if you heed the advice, then you will reap the benefit of that advice. So homework. Chapter 9, case studies, read chapter 10. This is a cakewalk compared to what you guys usually have to do. This is nothing. The thing I want to make sure of is that you remember that you are going to be with me. Oh, wait a minute. Too bad I don't know. So next Saturday, we are switching gears. We're going to do our morning class. So basically how this is designed for you guys is we're going to do morning class. And it's a bit early. Bit early, and I have to get here at 6 a.m. to do this, Dan. So we're going to do the morning class, and then what would the equivalent of your afternoon class would be your next self-study class. So that's how they set it up. So today I promised you appropriate credits, and I delivered. All the credits we covered are non-refundable. We looked at the child and dependent care credit and the rules required to claim that credit. We even talked about the imaginary income that might need to be calculated to claim that credit. We answered the burning question, is there still penalty for not being covered by medical insurance? The answer is no longer if you didn't figure that out. We then discussed a mixture of minor credits. Looking forward, I can truly say that the next session is my favorite subject I teach. Everything to do about education credit. And I'm just going to tell you something. I am known around the office as the queen of education credit. Okay? And I'll explain that in next session. Any questions about this session? Otherwise, I thank you all for your participation, for doing chat, for going out on a limb and raising your hand, for texting on my screen. because it's really difficult to talk at a screen for 3 hours and wonder how you guys are doing. So with that being said, if you need additional help, hang out. Otherwise, say goodbye and chat and have a great week. Email me if you have any questions. If you need my help now, stick around. I'll stick around for you, okay? And if you need help, raise your hand, and I'll take you in the order of your hand being raised, okay? Goodbye, you guys. Have a great Saturday.